Is Celestia dumb? She certainly doesn't appear to be the brightest bulb in the box, often giving weird orders without any apparent reasoning behind them or expressing her knowledgelessness about various subjects. But then again, she has a pretty good record of success. I'm sure we can find some sort of explanation to all this. Let's start by reading off some of the lore, shall we? Two sisters creating harmony, yada yada yada, nightmare moon, elements of harmony, yada yada, longest day of the 1000th year. Wait, what? She has been ruling Equestria for 1,000 years. Reason number one, that place that in 1 year, maybe two, was attacked by a dragon, a hydra. The Cerberus protecting the gates of Tartarus got loose, the place with all the demons and stuff, you know. And, of course, the Parasprites, a group of predatory creatures that has enough raw eating power to make a swarm of locusts go, "Damn! You hungry?" That's not even close to it either. There are mules, horses, and griffins, all sorts of sentient creatures that could be a threat. They don't live in anything close to a utopian society either. People are as horrible, practicing varying degrees of schadenfreude, to each other as they are here. Not to mention some widespread racism against mules and zebras, the latter of which was subject to almost witch-burning levels of superstition. Never mind a full 1,000 years, how did she keep it from falling apart in the first 5? I mean, Celestia is by no means invincible, as has been made abundantly clear by the Canterlot wedding. If a really serious rebellion, or a superior opposing army, or even a dragon looked at Canterlot Castle and thought, 1,000 ponies serving my every woman who will gather gems for me, I want that. There's nothing she could realistically do about it. I mean, sure, she has her guards, but what could they really do about an assault of demons from the depths of Tartarus, or a changeling swarm, or even a horde of angry griffins armed to the teeth, and living in a Spartan-esque society? Ooh, I'm gonna write that down. Sorry, video. Reason number 2. I don't know about you, but when I hear that someone has lived for 1,000 years, that alone says a lot about them. The two major pitfalls that the truly ancient fall into is that of insanity and depression. They tend to go mad from sheer living as they watch their friends and loved ones die. If they escape that, they tend to become haggard with life at about year 300 or so, quickly losing passion in all aspects of their life, including purpose and meaning, as well as becoming immune to experiencing the new in life. Those that avoid this second type of pitfall usually find something to preoccupy themselves with, like work or a definable goal. Reason number 3, Celestia's work is the absolute dictatorship of Equestria. Now, to be in a ruling position is a little different than a normal job. There is no okay plateau where you reach a certain level of competency and you can just do your job on autopilot and never get any more efficient at it at all. If you lose your edge as an absolute monarch for any length of time, the result is almost always death. I'm going to say that goes double for Equestria, considering the amount of deadly creatures just lying about the place. Over here, over there. Reason number 4. I'm going to go off on a tangent here just for a second and say that in human society there is a thing called general intelligence that tries to describe how smart we are overall. A common way to measure general intelligence is by giving it an IQ value, which is intelligence in relation to our current age. The average intelligence for people is 100. That is what the number stands for, our average intelligence. However, how smart that 100 IQ means you are has not always been the same. If a person from 5, 10, 20 or more years ago took that test and got the same score on it that someone did today, who was the same age as he was, that person 20 or more years ago would have gotten a couple more points than the one today, because humans have been getting overall more intelligent as time goes on. We have noticed a trend in our history as well, that as society and technology improved, so did our intelligence. It is still happening today, faster than ever. And if Celestia really lived for 1,000 years, all that time, getting better at her job, so did everyone else who might oppose her. With each generation, it would become noticeably more difficult to fend off threats from within her own realm, not to mention anyone else who might want to rule Equestria. Reason 4.5. She supposedly did this without a single war occurring. It's in there in the plot. She was lying. Maybe she was lying about this. After all, winners do get to write the history books. But if she did, why is there nothing about it at all? I mean, surely the wives of soldiers or the families would remember, put up shrines to honor the dead or something. Everyone is far too concerned with their own stuff and how they will accomplish it to remember the past. There should be some kind of scar left over from a traumatic event like that. Not on the surrounding lands, but on the people themselves. But no, they love her. Respect, too. Not the kind of respect that involves burning down villages either. That level requires a certain amount of skill. And if there was really not any wars the entire time she was ruling, that's even more impressive. Not really anything inclusive, but something worth mentioning. Reason number 5. To be honest, I don't think I've seen Celestia relax for any real length of time. She's always performing her royal duties or signing things. The only time she ever even seems to slow down is when she comes to see Twilight. Actually, she seems to do that a lot. During A Bird in the Hoof, at the end of The Swarm in the Century, Feeling Pinky Keen, and a whole bunch of other times. She never seems to stay long, though. It's almost as if she stops by just long enough to check on Twilight, then leaves. That's not to mention her incredibly speedy response times for some of Twilight's letters. It's almost as if she was just waiting for Twilight to send them to her. And that's just the stuff we see her do. For all we know, she could have people gathering intelligence for her. I mean, she is an absolute monarch after all. Information is power. If someone has more than you, trouble lies ahead. And I somehow seem to have forgot to mention what being good and being an absolute monarch actually means. First and foremost, to be successful as a ruler, it is necessary that you be good with people. Other things are involved, of course, like organization and economy, but ultimately those jobs can be delegated. Knowing how people tick is by far the most important one. Celestia has seen the rise and fall of a dozen pony generations. She probably knows some ponies better than they know themselves. Reason number 6. One final tangent here. There are people in the human world that have become almost masters of manipulation. They use psychology to manipulate the actions of others. A particularly fun example of this would be the movie Now You See Me, in which a bunch of magicians use subliminal messages not seen or heard by the conscious or awake part of the mind, which they use to influence a targeted man, persuading him, without even knowing about the persuasion, to go on a vacation to a specific country. Now, think a moment on Celestia. How much could she have learned? After all, it was her job to know what made people tick. If she got good enough at it, she could make people tick any way she wants them to. For the humans that learned how, it only took part of a lifetime. She had several. But what real proof do we have that Celestia could be intelligence this way? We have none. None at all. So, let's just, for the fun of it, go all the way back to the pilot episode, shall we? An episode so laced with coincidences that Swiss cheese would start telling it to cover up all its holes. Had it no shame? Even I don't show that many holes. All of the episode's problems center on how unlikely all of the individual events were, which led up to the outcome of the episode. Twilight finding a book of predictions and prophecies one day before the Summer Sun celebration, there being exactly 5 other ponies to represent the elements of harmony who were willing to follow Twilight into exactly 5 challenges that she faced. Let's tackle the book first. So, Celestia is Twilight's teacher. That means she has the ability to sign reading, right? So Celestia, having known Twilight for most of her life, would know that she has an insatiable thirst for knowledge, and is good at making decisions and connections. All she would have to do is assign related reading for her, and Twilight would eventually find the predictions and prophecies book, if she hadn't already. I mean, doesn't sound unreasonable, does it? Next is the big challenge. What would it take to turn Twilight's friends helping her from coincidence into certainty? Let's start with how does one become suitable for element of harmony use anyway? I'll tell you the 2 ponies that do know. Luna and Celestia. They use the elements of harmony together, and Celestia even used the elements of harmony by herself. All she would have to do is find 5 or 6 ponies who fit the description well enough and get them together into one area. But let's say for the sake of argument that no ponies were up to snuff, or that leaving it up to chance was just unacceptable. What would Celestia need to do to craft these personalities into their elements of harmony? Psychology studies indicate that amongst humans, 50 to 70% of personality traits are due to a child's environment. All she would have to do is look for someone that was already on their way to becoming an element bearer and change a few things. As discussed earlier, ideas can be conveyed to a person without them necessarily being aware of it. Individual persuasion would have very little effect, but if done over years, the total effect can be very impressive. There are a great many ways to change or reinforce certain behaviors, from the subtle to the overt. Anyone remember lobotomies? Ugh. If she chose enough subjects, she wouldn't even have to worry about some of the inevitable failures. Derpy? No, not going down that road. Moving on. She could have had her pick of the crop. She had all the resources in Equestria at her disposal. She wouldn't even have to use her own 2 hoofs. Now, let's just take a moment to think on the main 6 cutie marks for a second, if you would. The last story in this origin, tied every last one of the stories to the sonic rain boom done by Rainbow Dash. I'll tell you right now, that seemed at the time coincidental as all hell. But when I think back to it now, she was just a little filly back then. She was not able to pull off a successful rain boom again until she was practically an adult. And even then, only under threat of death of her friends, for the first time anyway, despite all the times in the past she had tried to pull it off again. Despite years of practice, nothing should have prevented her from being able to do it again, at least not for so long. It's almost like she had the help at the time, or just the right nudge at just the right time, in just the right place. Now, who do you think could have been responsible for that? Easier conditions, more or less humidity, favorable wind currents? Sounds like all something weather ponies could do. But that's ridiculous. That and all of Twilight's friends seem to have an extroverted personality, and or a very good reason to be friends with Twilight. Pinkie Pie's reason, of course, being that she was Pinkie Pie. Now, that I think about it too, who could have written that detailed Canterlot history book, or the predictions and prophecies book, for that matter? I can tell you it wasn't Prince Blueblood. And I don't have any concrete evidence, of course, that Celestia wrote the prophecies and predictions book, but it seems awfully, for lack of a better word, coincidental. Even if she didn't write it, I bet she had at least read it or heard of it. And when the Summer Sun celebration was concerned, was there any aspect that Celestia wasn't ultimately in control of? The celebration is about her, after all, the big event being her raising the sun. She is in charge of its location, is the one who gave Twilight the list of who the festivity organizers were. There was an actual checklist of people. And wait. No. Oh, the stars aid in her escape. You know what astronomers love to call stars sometimes? Celestial bodies. And the sun? That's a star too. She wrote the prophecy. I can't believe that Celestia is the one who let Nightmare Moon out. She had complete control over everything the whole time. If Twilight and friends weren't ready to face the challenge, Nightmare Moon simply would not have broken free. And of course, when Equestria was on the line, Twilight and friends went to save it. Because I honestly can't think of a pony who would much rather have everything covered in ice because of a perpetually below zero temperatures due to lack of sunlight and heat. So they trot off to receive their last plot convenience, which was exactly 5 challenges by Nightmare Moon herself. I just can't see Celestia being responsible or arranging this in any manner. But I do believe the comics have an answer for this problem. In issues number 5 through 8 of the MLPFIM comics, revealed to us that creatures known as nightmare forces possessed Luna in a moment of weakness. And later in those comics, it showed us that strong emotion could temporarily overcome this possession entirely. Luna may have had small and or subtle control over her actions as Nightmare Moon, allowing it easier for her to be broken free of the control of her captors. But the real question here is, what the heck is Celestia's deal? A very complex question. But I have to start somewhere, so she always seems so calm and so reserved, so sure of herself and what she is doing. She always seemed to know what's going on, almost before it happens. She's definitely not perfect, though. That time she got owned by Chrysalis. Come to think of it, I wonder who sent that threat against Equestria anyway. Chrysalis probably didn't. She wanted that shield to come down. She also lost her control when Discord showed up. Her cool was blown. I mean, how could she have expected him to return? Because nobody expects the Draconiquisian Inquisition. She had no time to prepare for discord. But her vanguard, Twilight Sparkle, took care of the problem with only a minimal nudge from the big princess herself. And just look at him. He works for Celestia now. His reformation was at her request, if I remember correctly. And Sombra barely even slowed Twilight down, a unicorn that nearly turned all of Equestria into a slave nation ruled over by a literal cloud of eternal despair. Ugh. Twilight is perhaps now the greatest weapon in all of Equestria, and she loves Celestia. She would do just about anything for her mighty ruler. In our world, we managed to harness some awesomely powerful weapons, like the mysteries of nuclear energy and the horrors its destruction wreaks. Celestia seems to have harnessed the two greatest weapons that exist in Equestria and bind them to her so only she could use them: friendship and love. If you read the Crystal Heart spell, I know I didn't, you would know that Cadence was taken in when she was young, and for her action she was turned into an alicorn. Celestia took her in at Canterlot Castle, and there was a close relationship between them, I think. Maybe Celestia is always so cool all the time because she knows what is going to happen next. She has grown a force so powerful that her enemies fear her. Except that they don't fear her, do they? They fear Twilight, no, the villains, I mean, most of them. If anyone wanted to take out Equestria, they would go after Twilight first, wouldn't they? And if Celestia is really as smart as I have been saying she could be, wouldn't it be in everyone's best interest that she stays alive? If Twilight falls, that is just a loss in protection, which can be replaced, though regrettable, can be replaced. But if Celestia goes down, that would mean game over for everyone. Becomes nature. She loves to pretend that her greatest weakness is in fact a strength. But the truly intelligent love to take their greatest strength and make it look like a weakness. It becomes a rather rude awakening to your enemies, I'll tell you that much. Celestia's deal is she plays the fool. Like from Shakespeare's plays, the fool is the guy who knows what's what and how to fix all the problems. But everyone in the play thinks he is a dullard who is not worth their time. But we, the audience, know better. But the roles seem to have been reversed. It is all the citizens of Equestria that know Celestia is wise and intelligent and cunning. But it is we, the audience, that has been fooled into thinking she is dumb and unworthy of ruling Equestria. Just like the movie Now You See Me. Spoilers, it turned out that in the end, the smartest person, the one who had the most control over the situation, was in fact the person who had appeared the dumbest. She really is all-powerful, and Equestria Girl's her former student, Sunset Shimmer, who Celestia, for some reason, decided not to capture or detain after she decided to leave Canterlot and subsequently ended up in the human world. But I bet she is glad she made that decision, because Twilight gained some good leadership skills in a safe test group, and I bet she got some decent information about the human world as well from it. But most importantly, Twilight learned how to use the elements of plot device powers without the elements actually being present. Which means that if Celestia wanted to, she could train another 6 to use the elements of harmony. Just in case, Twilight fails. Unlikely, but it could happen. And I mean, who would argue that Celestia is the reason that Twilight is successful as she is today? Celestia did raise her from a little filly after all. I mean, the question being posed here was exactly how much effort did she put into training her star pupil? The absolute best part about all of this is pretty much every last one of you fell for it. Hook, line, and sinker. All she had to do was pretend that someone else was better at her job than she was. No matter the shadows, the hints, the subtle droppings left over in the plot, not even her sister can see her for what she is. She had the motivation, the time, and the resources necessary to accomplish all of these feats. She has been protecting us longer than anyone else I can remember, and I cannot imagine an Equestria without a Celestia. Digibrony attested that destiny had a role to play in My Little Pony, considering that one of the definitions of destiny is the predetermined, usually inevitable or irresistible course of events, as well as a power or agency that determines the course of events. But instead of cosmic forces being responsible, I say that Celestia is that force or agency. It may not be everything the exact way it happened, of course, but I can promise you this. We will never get an episode all about Celestia, because if we did, it would blow our minds. And that's it. Without use of any super extraordinary circumstances or new plot devices, I provided a possible explanation for Celestia's behavior based on information gathered directly from the narrative itself. There is no Deus Ex Machinas here. There are no gods in this machine, and all of these machines here are atheists. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm feeling a pressing need to pass out.